Wow, the breeze is nice out here. And I've kind of been dreading this job because we have 3 large rooms to add skirting boards on. So we've got the living room, the dining room, and an L-shaped hallway. Now I've only fitted skirting board twice that I remember, nothing to this scale. So I'm going to show you any tips and tricks that I've learned along the way that my dad's taught me in previous projects. I've only ever done 1 internal scribe in my life, so I'm going to be rusty. I'm going to be doing a lot of practicing, but luckily cork should fix any kind of blemishes. I don't mean bodging it though. So the first thing that I've had to do is go around the whole room with my scraper. I bought especially for this because although we have painted and decorated, I've gone around the whole bottom walls scraping off any protruding plaster, and that was particularly important in this room because, well, it wasn't just plaster, it was also probably old cork that we didn't take off fully. So when I held a bit of skirting board up to that, you could see it pivoting, and that is what I don't want. So I've gone round and I've scraped everywhere. I scraped off a bit more than Mr. TCD wanted me to. So we've got some touch-ups, but then I've been knocking these walls on and off, being clumsy with things in general. So we've got to do that. We'll do that at the same time as painting the skirting boards. And I've got this wall to scrape off now anyway, because we've only just taken this radiator off. And we had to take it off because we couldn't get to the old nails that were down here underneath it. They're gone now. You can see there's bits here. Now, a few weeks ago when I laid the oak parquet flooring, I asked you what skirting you thought we should put down, because we were torn about oak and I've always installed white, and I think it was about 50-50. And in the end, we realised we probably should go for white because we'd spent ages, well, Mr. TCD had spent ages painting the architrave white. And we've got 8 doorways with this architrave, front and back. So in the end, we just thought, let's go with white. Anyway, we couldn't decide what skirting board and what height. So I asked Skirting World if they could send me a few samples, and they did. And these samples are 18mm thick and 120mm high. And we just couldn't decide which one we liked online. That's why we wanted a good choice. So I highly recommend just grabbing some samples if you can, just to compare, because you don't want to spend a lot of money and realise, actually, I've ordered the wrong thing. And luckily, they've got lots of different designs to match different architraves. So that was our goal. Which one would look great with the existing one? And we think we found the closest one, which is this. And it's called the Mini OG1. It's not exactly the same, but we think that is good enough. And the reason I've picked 18mm thickness is it's not thicker than the existing architrave, and I know it will safely cover all of my clearance gaps, because we were told to leave, I think it was a 10 to 12mm or even bigger for these. But to me, it was more of an insurance policy to make sure it covered all of the clearances. Anyway, in terms of height, we've gone for 145mm because we've also got some existing ones in the other rooms that we don't really plan to take off. And I know that Skirting World do a cover version of this height that we can just cut to length and then slot over the top of it. So that was very attractive for us for future rooms. Anyway, if you do want to go for a taller skirting board, we were told that the difference is only added to the bottom, not the top. So that's just to give you an example. And no, they don't come damaged. I accidentally knocked that. Oh, and I nearly forgot. We've gone for primed as well. We could have gone for painted or bare, but we thought primed would save us a lot of hassle, and then we can paint it ourselves at the end. Anyway, Skirting World have kindly gifted all of our skirting today, and they personally delivered it themselves, I think all the way from Birmingham. So these are stacked up. These are 4.2 metre lengths, and the reason why we went for those is, well, there's less joins for each room. Anyway, I need to show you how I've done my first cut. And that was using my laser measure to get the distance from one end of the room to the other. And this will be a nice straightforward cross cut both ends, as it's the first wall you see when you walk into the room. So no internal mitres will be visible. So now it's cut and temporarily in place, I'm going to be using various different glues and methods to attach it to the wall. So I've got a mix of sticks like Soudall Fix-All, some Henway construction adhesive that I used for the tiles in grey, but I might not need to use those again. And I wanted to see what this looked like to see how it was against the wall. Because when we're gluing it, we'll probably need to prop it into position to try and keep it stuck there. So I've also got my nail gun out and a handful of nails to just try and temporarily nail it. I just don't want to go down the drilling and screwing with raw plugs. I want to try and keep any scars on this as a minimum, and then little things that I can just fill, like nails. Now the reason I wanted to start with this wall is because where you're stood is where you would enter into the room. And so when I do a scribe cut, an internal scribe here, it's going to be less visible from your angle. So that's why I wanted a straight cut here, and once I've got it, it'll push against there and it won't be visible. That side is nice and straightforward, and I'll just cork it. So I have a smaller offcut from this, and I think this is the perfect time to practice doing an internal scribe. And I know that this wall is more than 4.2 metres in length. So I think I'm going to start with that, mitre this end and that end, and push this against it. And now draw along my cut to enhance the visibility of the profile. And this will tell me where to cut, which I took a leaf out of Charlie DI's book and tried his recommended Irwin ultrafine handsaw, cutting on a slight angle, back cutting, along the pencil line, and this should create more wiggle room for me in case the corners of my walls aren't square. When I get to the top of my line, I saw in the same direction as the long skirting to remove it, and I have to agree that this saw was an absolute dream to use. For the curved profile, I used my Bacco 301 coping saw, very slowly and carefully following my pencil lines. Also, try not to forget to back cut again. Now this was my first attempt on this job, and I had some chipping, nothing cork and paint wouldn't sort out, and sanded any roughness out of my cut end. It was looking alright, but I noticed that the tops weren't quite level, knocking it out of line, which I realised after I'd done more fine tuning that I hadn't done enough back cutting. Anyway, I do promise I get better and quicker the more I do. Anyway, now if you come closer, this is the best I could get it, pushing up against there. So I'm going with that. I'm fairly happy. That will fill with cork. Initially, I was blaming this as the culprit. That's why there's a little bit shy here. But it was actually the top here where I needed to back cut even more. So a bit of cork, I'm sure, will fill that. Now I'm going to add a mitre on here, and then I could put a mitre on my next one and then have a straight cut over there, and those will be ready to fix to the wall. So I'm going to have the mitre facing here so the join is less visible when you come into the room. And I'm going to get into the habit of drawing which way I want them to go. It can be so easy to get mixed up. So I'm going to cut that way. I flipped it over so I don't have to mess about. Right. So that'll go there. We now need a mitre cut on a long piece, and then we can measure it down to cut. And you can see it's starting to highlight any of the flaws in the plaster, but that will get covered with cork. Good old cork. And because it's MDF, we've also got to be careful we don't knock the edges. So we've knocked this one already, so I've got to now cut that like that, but at least it's on the end and I can get rid of it. But the reason I've gone for MDF, it doesn't warp. It's cheap, and I'm going to paint it anyway. Normally I'd use my big Evolution one on my mitre saw stand, but it's so much easier having this on the floor, propped up on some blocks because of the length and weight of it. For cuts between a wall and existing skirting, I use my laser measure again and aim for an offcut positioned in line with the longest side of the bevel cut that I need. So after my bevel cut, I make a cross cut for the corner of the wall. Now time for a test fit. Please fit, don't... Is it a bit too long? No, we need to trim it down a touch. However, here's the first mistake that I made. Got to be all right now. No, it might still be a bit tight. I can give you a little bit more. Oh no, you're having a laugh. I'm guessing, oh I reckon that board wasn't pushed in enough because I haven't cut that much off. Anyway, it'll do. Now before I carry on doing any internal scribes, I think the best thing to do is get this big one on the wall and then I can do all of that in one go. So I'm going to try Soudall's Fix All first, and I've got a nail gun at the side and I'll add a few on an angle to hit the plaster and hopefully that'll keep it in place for the next 24 hours. And if that doesn't work, I do have a hammer and some nails. I don't really want to go down that route, but we'll see. And some of them we might be able to get away with just putting weights against them. I really need to get myself an electric caulking gun because I remember this one being a bit painful. Okay, let's stick it on. That's I'm all right with that. Right, I'm going to try the nail gun thing. Hey, it works. Tiny pinholes. It seems to be working. By the way, all of our floors are concrete, so we know the cables are actually coming from above. But it's just a safe idea to avoid nailing under here, particularly if you've got wooden floors. That sounds like it's out. I ran out of nails and had to fill up and nail again. For this wall, I wasn't so lucky with the nails and it was still wobbly and not as tight a fit to the wall as I was sure I could get. So I had to get some dumbbells out for quickness to hold it in place overnight while I rethink my plan. And in some cases, it was causing more trouble than it was worth with split wood and protruding nails, which later I needed to use a nail cutter and a nail punch to bury them. But that back first wall was absolutely fine. And if you've just got stud walls, then this method is perfect for you. So after leaving it to cure overnight, I tried once again with glue nails on my 4.5 metre wall in the living room. And the nails did absolutely nothing securing it to the wall. And I thought this was no longer a sustainable method for me. I now try a regular hammer and nails and weights to try and secure it. Again, not the best use of my time, so I had to make the decision to scarring the wood with mechanical fixings. And by that I mean drilling with a 6mm wood drill bit through the skirting, move on to a 6mm masonry bit with my SDS hammer drill, then a countersunk bit, a red roll plug that I'd then tap in with a screw and a hammer, then fix it with the screw. So it's not really that ideal if you've only got one combi drill that you've got to keep changing over. And yes, it took me lots of time filling later, well, Mr. TCD, but I knew that I could move on to the next board, get the job done, and know that I had a good secure fix. My next board is another internal scribe, which I filmed for social media, but even though this is my second attempt, I found myself feeling more and more confident each time I did it. And in fact, now I can tell you this was my most favourite task to do on the whole job, and I found it very therapeutic. Now this section is a batten and plasterboard wall, so luckily glue and nails were enough here. And if you don't know where your studs are, then a simple magnet will do the trick detecting where your screws or nails are. So this side of the room is almost done. Now I want to do an internal scribe here and then an external mitre here. Now you might be wondering which cut I'm going to do first. Well, I'm going to start with the internal scribe, and once I've pushed it against the existing one, then I can draw from behind here and then work out where I need to cut my bevel. But I'm definitely not doing an internal scribe on a 4.2 metre length piece of skirting. So first I'm going to cut it down to a manageable size, 2 metres. And from this point and for the whole project, I found I was better at my right-hand side internal scribes, and I found them perfect and didn't need any fine-tuning. But my left-hand side ones always did. Hello, sweetie. I mark where the end of the external wall is and a quick angle line so I know which way my bevel needs to go, but also drew behind it. I preferred cutting on the face of the skirting to avoid any tear out, but sometimes it wasn't practical, and honestly, I found almost no difference. To secure my external mitres, I'm using Everbuild's Mitre Fast for the very first time, which I've wanted to try for years but never really had the need for. And it's like a super glue with an activator in an aerosol can, which I recommend doing lots of test fits first, pretending you've added your glue, because once you've squiggled your glue on and sprayed the matching piece of wood, then press them together, hold it for about 10 seconds, it sets very quickly. And if you've not done dress rehearsals, you'll find it's not as easy as you expect. And if you're not happy with it and you take it apart, or you weren't quick enough sticking it together, starting again means lots of sanding or rasping the glue off. Easier said than done. So this is how it's looking. The wall actually just tapers over there. I have tested this with an angle finder and it was fine. I'll show you how I do that later. But I wasn't totally happy with how I held the mitre together. So I need some practice, but I'm not taking it apart. I'm just going to fill any slight little gaps there. Anyway, I need to now glue this on, and I bought myself a little present. When you use quite a lot of grab adhesive, you'll find the gun just digs into this part of your hand. And look what's just arrived. It's an Einhell corking gun. It wasn't cheap, but it was one of the cheapest without a battery, and I've got loads of Einhell stuff, so it just made sense. Anyway, I'm moving on to sticks like and I still don't know how to put this together. The piece is in, oh there, the piece is here. I know a lot of you have said over the years to get one. So you pull the trigger and this will keep moving out. I've got different speeds. I'll probably start slow and, oh, I think that's just doing a return just so it doesn't keep coming out. I'm going to start low and then I'm going to push this and it should go back. It did go back. Oh, maybe when I pulled it earlier, it was actually tilting. There's my answer. So I'm guessing I just screw that in. It's heavier. So setting, I'm trying one first. I can hear it. It's taking its time. It's not coming out of there, is it? Oh, that feels very loose. Oh, it feels tighter. Oh, hey. It's not hurting. I just thought I don't want to go too far to the bottom because it's totally pointless. I can see it using a lot more. Now I'm going to offer it up. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to have to mount this quickly. Put a couple of screws in. Right. The next mistake I did was rely on the mitre fast joint when fixing to the wall where the plaster was wonky. Oh, so I had to think very carefully where I positioned my mechanical fixings, and sometimes where I thought I needed it, I'd add a second screw underneath. And the next side I need to do is over there. But because this is the first board that you see when you enter the room, I'm going to go for a straight cut there and have my internal scribe on this side. I checked the corner with my angle finder, and you can see here that it's pretty much 45 degrees. So for the sake of a fraction, I just went with it. And this is where I started to do several dress rehearsals, pretending I've got glue on my mitres before going for gold. And it helps to do this on a flat surface. And after screwing this board on, I later realised I made another mistake by not adding another row of screws at the bottom. I'll show you why later. Mitre Fast also became very useful for the small, trickier sections, like our wall opening, which later we may add a door frame here, but wanted it covered for now. So the last thing I showed you was me making a few mitre cuts around this wall. Now I've cut another piece leading into the hall, but I'm going to stop right here and give Mr. TCD a job, and I'll show you what that is, and then hopefully he can catch up with me by the time I've hopefully finished the hall. And that is this, using filler to fill any of the screw and nail holes. Now if I could have just got away with nails, that would have been great because they are tiny. Obviously the screw holes are much bigger and they might need to be filled twice if it shrinks. We'll put a bit more over there. And this stuff takes 1 to 2 hours to dry. Although obviously the nail holes will dry quicker than the countersunk ones. So while Mr. TCD is working his way around, I'm going to continue with this, and I've temporarily propped my next cut and pushed it up against the mitre. Now this will be glued in with the mitre fast properly, but I've just propped it in place and I've already done a mitre on the end. So I'm going to go for a straight cut in here because I don't want the internal scribe to be seen as you're coming in. But just to point out, I just did a little test. I've created a slight bevel or a slight back cut against the architrave so I get a neat finish. And so there's no gap here. That's going to be more important for these parts where I've got 2 architraves to work between. Now this is the piece that I've got planned to go there, and I'm going to do my internal scribe here, but notice it's actually a bit longer. So once I've got that against there, I can work out my cut to go in between. Now for cuts like this, if I have a straight cut and push it against, I'm left with a slight gap here. So I'm going to back cut this by 5 degrees and then exactly the same on that. Oh, I like it. So for those who despise filling screw holes too, I thought I'd try another recommendation by Charlie, which were these lost tight screws. And the heads are not that dissimilar in size than a nail, and it comes with its own Torx bit. Instead of using glue this time, I drilled through the skirting board first with a 2mm bit until it marked the plaster behind, then removed the skirting board to drill through the marks with my 6mm masonry bit and added my usual red raw plugs. Then put the skirting back on and screwed it to the wall. Now the only thing I didn't like about these is that they didn't nip the skirting board into the wall as much as my countersunk screws did. But if you want to minimise filling holes, then this could be a bliss option. I also missed adding glue, but that's completely optional. So for the rest of the haul, I reverted back to my tried and tested method. Occasionally you may find obstacles like plastic door trim in the door reveals, which because this was so close to the hinge, I had to partially rip it off the wall and then use a hacksaw to cut it down so I could carry on. I also occasionally had some problems with slight high spots on the floor, which admittedly I left a handful as I plan on adding an oak coloured gap filler. So I drew where the high spot was on the skirting board, then took time to file it down. Yes, I could have used a belt sander, but I just didn't want something too aggressive. So I've temporarily stopped what I'm doing because I'm going to show you what Mr. TCD will be doing next. So hopefully by the time I've finished the skirting, he's caught up with me by painting with AquaGuard durable satin finish, which we've used on the architrave before, and we think it's very good stuff, and we know it shouldn't yellow. So I'm giving it a good stir, and what I've done is put some cardboard down, masking taped areas, and where I could fit it under, I've just pushed some paper under there. And obviously, because I've already done the hole, Mr. TCD's filled it and sanded it, and now it's all smooth, ready for the paint. Oh, and he's vacuumed. Oh, dog hairs! So I'm only adding a little bit to the brush to do the tops. Oh, I can't stop it. Right, shall I leave you to it? Oh, I feel sorry for you. I don't mind this job. I can totally live with that. Finally, I saved the most awkward area till last, skirting around the horns of our new oak threshold. But when I offered my perfect internal scribe, I noticed it wasn't perfect to the existing skirting, and this is when I realised that I should have also added screws at the bottom of the other skirting board, as it was now on an angle. So I had to file it down slightly until it was a snug fit. So I've just managed to get it in enough. I know it's a smidgen shy there. I'm going to live with that. I'm going to fill that. Anyway, I've offered it up and I can't work out where to cut my next mitres. So I'm going to first draw behind it where the threshold goes so I can cut a notch out. And yet using a jigsaw was another mistake because it didn't make the straightest cuts, and I thought it would be straighter than this, but the blade just wanted to bend a bit too much, making it more time consuming, offering it up, checking for different high spots, filing it down just so I could slot it around the threshold. But before I move on to a different method for the other side, I mark where to cut the mitre, come on, and rip down the return piece with my compact saw while screwed to a heavy piece of wood. So obviously in this case, I found joining the mitre while they were upside down far easier. Okay with that. Please fit, now I've done all of that. I can't grumble. So before I put my boards on, I want to silicone here, so any future water doesn't go down here and warp my wood. Anyway, for that, I am not using my caulking gun, so I've got better control. So I ditched the jigsaw for the opposite side and used my compact saw again for most of the way and hand sawed the rest, which gave me a much tidier finish. And this external corner was 44 degrees, so I made 2 matching cuts with the mitre saw set to this, which I then continued to use my mitre glue to work my way backwards. You know what? It's starting to feel like a proper home, especially since Mr. TCD has thoroughly cleaned the floor now. There's no dust anywhere. And he's also asked me to do some caulking, which I've done behind the radiators, and he's got those back on, up and running. Now he wants to actually move our office in here. So I've been given the task of caulking this side. Now I've not done everywhere because I'm actually in the middle of editing the very long video for this. It's taken ages, as they always do. But let's get cracking with this, and I can wipe any excess down and leave Mr. TCD to fill the office area while I carry on. And I haven't quite got used to the gun for intricate detail yet. This is my least favourite job. Oh, and I'm just going to quickly caulk over that tiny gap where I'd cut the board too short. So we're almost there, but I've run out of time again because, well, it's 3 rooms. trying to cram it all in one video. But I've corked a handful of places. I've not gone everywhere. I've just run out of time. And the other thing that I wanted to do was around the threshold. So now Mr. TCD's painted it, I need to fill these all around there. And something that I mentioned in the previous video, we were talking about having skirting board under here in white. But when we stepped back and looked at it, we realised actually oak is going to be so much better. And that was another thing that I wanted to do for this video, is use some of the offcuts of the parquet and the plank, which is one of your suggestions, and put it under there. And I think that would look really good. And if you look around here, we get a taste of an office. Mine's not in here yet because I'm still stuck in the kitchen editing my video on my PC, my desktop PC. But this is Mr. TCD's setup. We've both got standing desks each, and I also want to get my treadmill desk in here. And I must admit, every time we walk into here, we just feel cozier. It's just so much nicer. I just want to do more corking and try the gap filler that I bought for underneath the skirting. Anyway, at the beginning of this video, I felt a bit nervous. I was dreading it because it's a large space and I hadn't done skirting board for ages. And now I feel a lot more confident, damn sight more confident to crack on with the other rooms, and they're smaller, so it's going to be a breeze. So my internal scribes, absolutely love doing it, highly recommend it. So much better than trying to do mitres that always show a gap. I'm not going back. And I hope this video was very in-depth and useful for you, so you can follow along and have a go yourself, because it wasn't really that hard. And I should have just gone straight for the screws right from the start. No messing about with just glue. I just lost so much time with dumbbells and stuff. Oh, and thank you again to Skirting World for donating our skirting. I will leave a link below if you want to try them out as well. It was a very straightforward delivery. It beat trying to go to a DIY store and bringing it back. Either way, I would have had to place an online delivery with somebody because we just don't have the vehicle for it. Anyway, I'm going to get some rest now because it's a Saturday night and this video goes live tomorrow. Anyway, catch you in the next one and hopefully you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching. Bye.